But it's important for us to remember it's all the same virus. The changes that we talk about are in fact very small changes considering the big structure of the virus. The good news is that even if it goes past the first level of protection, it is not able to cause harm to those who've been previously exposed or who are adequately vaccinated. The bad side of the story is that this thing does not seem to be going away anytime soon. The point is that it is quite possible that this apparent mildness is the result of the host rather than the agent. Host is a human being and agent is the virus. So stay away from all kinds of scam treatments.
According to you, what do we know about this virus till now? What information do we have about this virus?
Omicron, as we know, is the most prevalent variant at this time, most common variant at this time. If we look back at the last, say, 2 years, we can see that a variant becomes common over a period of several months, and then it gradually gets replaced by other variants. But it's important for us to remember it's all the same virus. COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 virus is not influenza. Many people draw unhealthy and inaccurate parallels with influenza. Influenza is a basket of many different viruses. The basket varies with time, and the pathology is different. And the way vaccines are made, everything is different for influenza. So back to SARS-CoV-2, it's the same virus that came out of Wuhan, we believe, back in December of 2019. The Greek names that are given to these variants are for technical purposes, are for classification purposes. And the changes that we talk about are in fact very small changes considering the big structure of the virus. For instance, the spike protein is 1,273 amino acids long, which basically are the building blocks of a protein. And these mutations only occur in a few of those. So as we know, many viruses, if you look at the history of viruses or what we commonly see in practice, many of them have this habit of coming in cyclical patterns. And that's the nature of the beast, if you will. This is a new virus, and this shares the same properties with coronaviruses, which is to come in cycles. So it has the capability to go past the vaccine-induced protection and protection from past infection. But the good news is that even if it goes past the first level of protection, it is not able to cause harm to those who've been previously exposed or who are adequately vaccinated. So that is the good side of the story. The bad side of the story is that this thing does not seem to be going away anytime soon, and it keeps coming back at us with greater power, if you will, to reinfect people more so than before. So clearly this virus is adapting to its newfound host, which it's been acquainted with in the last 2 years.
Definitely, the virus is transferring onto people faster. The reach is higher and it's faster than the Delta variant. But how much severity would you say is it? Is it more severe than the Delta variant?
Now, there are different angles to that question that you asked. So I'll deal with the severity part first. Now, severity is defined as the kind of outcomes the virus produces across different age groups. Now, if you want to look at published data, we always would like to look at published data because anecdotal data can be biased from the viewer's viewpoint. For example, if you only stand in an ICU and look at all the patients who are coming in, you may conclude that Omicron is more severe than anything else. If you sit in a clinic and see patients, you may only see the mildest patients. If you sit in an airport and do lab testing and you find Omicron, you'll find that they have no symptoms. So again, it depends on where you're looking and what sampling process is resulting in the cases. So if you look at the only published series of Omicron, it comes from South African researchers who've readily published their recent wave, which yielded some remarkable trends. The most important trend is that The spike in cases was near vertical, which means it went straight up. The numbers shot up astronomically, and it came down as quickly as that. So that's one. The second, the breadth of the wave, how wide or how long or the duration of the wave was remarkably shorter than a Delta variant. What is also interesting is that if you look at the age profile of the South African cohort, or the cohort basically means a group of individuals under study, they were almost 2 decades younger than the Delta wave. Now, that is not to say that this virus is not going to affect older people. The data we have from South Africa is mainly among people who are nearly 20 years younger on average. Of course, there were some older people as well, but in reality, the net age, the average age was 20 years younger, which means that if you take COVID-19 in general, we know that age is the biggest comorbidity, or in other words, older people definitely have worse outcomes. If you put the two together, if you see a virus that's spread in younger age groups, the outcomes will be milder. So what we do not know, or the gap in our knowledge, is how exactly has this virus performed in older age groups, specifically people over the age of 60. Now, until we have that data, it is safer to assume that this virus has the same severity, but the population is better protected than we were during Delta times. Remember, when Delta came, it came to India, or dominated India around April of 2021. At that time, very few people had been vaccinated, and the first wave had gone through India. Some parts had been severely affected, other parts had hardly been disturbed. So Delta got a free run in all these areas that had not been infected. And in the process, Delta made a lot of people immune to SARS-CoV-2. Likewise, South Africa, Omicron was coming as the 4th wave. And each wave in sequence has caused what is called natural immunization of a large segment of its population. And there's no way to accurately measure how many people are actually infected. The most recent estimates in India say around 87% from the most recent series of 330 people out of AIG hospitals. The official aggregate published data is 69%. Now, that doesn't mean all of India is 69%. It can be more, it can be less, it can be scattered, and so on. The point is that it is quite possible that this apparent mildness is the result of the host rather than the agent. Host is a human being, and agent is the virus. The virus might be the same, but the people that it is infecting are all having antibodies and T cells and memory cells to its immune structure. So therefore, their immune response was more prompt and perhaps saved them from severe disease. Now, that's what I believe, until we have evidence to the contrary on 2 fronts. One, I need definite evidence of how this virus performs in older groups, which I'm sure we will get from Europe as well as the United States in the next couple of weeks. Second is, I want to know how this virus performed, or how this virus affected the unvaccinated, uninfected group, of which there may not be that many in the world, because we know that a huge number of people have been naturally infected, much more than we originally estimated. So that is a segment that I want to look at before we really comment on how severe it is.
Do you see it playing differently, say, in India?
We know that predictions are not very accurate when it comes to SARS-CoV-2 virus. So I'm not here to predict anything. I'll tell you something from my knowledge of immunology and of epidemiology. South Africa is a model that may be closer to India than the United States or the UK is, for many reasons. In Gauteng province in South Africa, where most of the cases were reported, the density of population is identical to that of several parts of India, including Kerala. The size of Gauteng province is about half of Kerala, just to put things in perspective for our viewers. The vaccination rate is about 10 to 20 percentage points behind India. But the natural infection rate, we simply do not know. As I said, it is impossible to estimate the natural infection rate, but considering the fact that it's a densely populated area, there's a lot of movement, traffic, travel, tourism, it's quite likely that many people have been exposed, just like it is in India. It is summer in South Africa, unlike winter in Britain. In winter, people gather indoors and the spread is worse. So in many ways, I would be inclined to compare India with South Africa, given a choice of the three options, that is between US, between the trends in the UK and Europe, and with South Africa. I would look closely at South Africa. Now, what we do not know is how many people in India are yet to be infected and are unvaccinated. We know that around 90 million people are yet to receive their first dose of vaccine among adults in India. That's a huge number. To put things in perspective, the UK's population is 68 million. So we have approximately 90 million people in India who are yet to receive their first dose of vaccine. Even though we've delivered so many, there are still people left in India. Now, in that 90 million, how many people have not been infected? I do not know. It will what this virus does in India will depend on that segment of the population. That is, in the unvaccinated, uninfected segment, I have no idea where these pockets are. Because obviously India is such a vast geographic expanse, and the population is scattered in different areas. So it's not like everybody is living in X number of people per square kilometer. So we'll just have to wait and see, because I think it will be wrong to make very granular predictions at this stage. I think we just have to wait and see and be prepared for surprises either way.
What about the vaccinated population? Do you know how Omicron treats them?
Well, we know from published data that vaccinated people, that is people who received 2 doses, have a near zero death rate from COVID-19. That's confirmed. And that has not declined. Okay. Even though we often hear that vaccines are waning and all that scary headlines, this aspect of immunity has not declined in any part of the world. I can confirm that, including in India, from what we are aware of. Okay. What has declined, though, is the ability of vaccines to prevent infections, which was not great to start with. Specifically, vaccines are able to prevent infections in the first 2 or 3 months, and after that, that ability rapidly declines. And that has been the biggest revelation of the last 12 months. And we saw that. And that is regardless of what vaccine it is. So your question about how it will behave in vaccinated people, there's no doubt it will be a mild illness among vaccinated people, with the exceptions being the older segment. Remember, older people are still at risk for severe disease even when they are vaccinated. Specifically, if you compare an 80-year-old unvaccinated person with an 80-year-old vaccinated person, the vaccinated person is much better placed. But compared to a 20-year-old vaccinated person, the 80-year-old vaccinated person is worse off. So I hope you understand the difference. So we'll just have to wait and see how it affects the older vaccinated age group. And I really hope that there are no older unvaccinated people, because that is really, really putting people at high risk. That particular segment, older and unvaccinated, not a good combination, particularly if they've never had natural infection. If such people are still remaining in our country, they must get vaccinated at the earliest opportunity.
So can it be confirmed, or is there any confirmation that we have, or any study that suggests that there is no lung impairment and involvement due to the virus, and it is just confined to the upper respiratory tract? Is there any study or suggestions that point us to that way?
I'll give you 2 bits of data. Again, the published data from South Africa, correcting for the age profile. Remember, I mentioned that this was 2 decades younger, the average age. In them, the amount of lung involvement was remarkably lower than the Delta wave. But that could well be for the reasons I mentioned. A, the different age group, and B, because they are a lot more immune now than compared to the Delta. So that's one. The second are some lab studies which have looked at different tissues in the labs, and and they measure the ability of this virus to affect different tissues. Now, lab studies are important, but they do not represent the human body as a whole. And the human body is more than the sum of a few cells because they function together, and how the virus functions in the real human body is what matters. But the trends that have been thrown, the trends that are showing from these lab experiments are indeed that this virus might prefer the upper respiratory tract more than the lower respiratory tract, or specifically the lungs. And I hope that trend will hold true in real life as well.
The Delta wave has been pretty brutal in India, and a
Yes,
high positivity rate has also been recorded, and almost
yes.
65% of our population is vaccinated now. Will all of that help us weather this better?
If South Africa's experience is any indication, your statement is true. It will definitely help us much more than it did in the beginning of the Delta variant. Remember, before Delta arrived, as we discussed earlier in the program, very few people were vaccinated, and not many were naturally infected. So we do have the advantage of an immunized population, if you will, naturally or otherwise. So I believe that that'll give us substantial protection. And also remember that many of the people who've received only one dose might have had at least one bout of natural infection prior, in which case they have acquired what is called hybrid immunity, which is apparently the finest and the most robust form of immune response a human being can aspire for. Even though it is not advisable to go and pick up natural infection, among those who've undergone natural infection and survived it, a dose of vaccine taken 3 months afterwards will provide an excellent immune response. And I think Delta hit India in April through June. And so that's about 6 months ago. And if they got vaccine in the 6-month period afterward, clearly we are still within a good window of protection. So a lot of these individuals will be protected from not only severe disease, but also infection to a large extent.
What is the current treatment protocol that we have right now for treating Omicron cases?
Well, the treatment of Omicron is expected to be no different from that of Delta, or that of Alpha or Gamma, or whatever variant you want to call it. Because as I said earlier, this is the same virus, regardless of whatever name you call it. So everything has been systematically rolled out in terms of guidelines. We treat people based on their clinical profile. The vast majority of individuals are of asymptomatic or mild symptoms, and we recommend no medications. I repeat, no medications of any kind are necessary for the vast majority of people. Now, that does not mean no treatment. Treatment does not mean the same as giving an injection or a tablet. Treatment is masterly observation of the individual to recommend what is necessary and what is not necessary. What is necessary is plenty of fluids during the time of fever, and keep oneself well hydrated. If there's a temperature, to take conservative measures to stop it, and to stay away from all kinds of scam treatments and all kinds of supplements, including vitamins. None of that is necessary. Antibiotics are not necessary. Over the last 2 years, we figured out what is not working. So stay away from all unnecessary medicine is my message to these people who are without symptoms and who have mild symptoms. The ones with moderate to severe symptoms have a tailor-made approach depending on their individual clinical profile. The game changer still has been dexamethasone or steroids, which unfortunately was used wrongly in many parts of the world after when Delta arrived. The thing about steroids is that it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. If you use it too early in the wrong patient, you may kill the patient. And if you use it too late, it might not work. And in the wrong dose, the wrong duration, it may harm the patient. So it has to be taken under supervision of an experienced doctor who has clear knowledge about what stage of the disease the patient is in. The other treatments are all secondary. For example, the antivirals are not expected to make a big difference in the outcomes because for many reasons. For one, most of the patients who are in the published series, in fact, all of them were unvaccinated, which means by default, they were expected to have bad outcomes. So the antivirals help them a little bit. When we deal with vaccinated people, many of us do not believe that these antivirals will produce any remarkable difference in their outcome. We will know that when more data comes out. So antivirals are not exactly a miracle cure for this condition. That's my message. Then what also matters is expert monitoring, when to admit patients, when not to admit patients, when to upgrade care, and so on. When to give oxygen, how much oxygen to give, and that sort of thing. So all the care has been sorted out now, and all the guidelines are clear. Unlike where we were in 2020, when people were not sure what to do, and all sorts of empirical treatments were being thrown at it.
Do you think that Omicron could help confer us with herd immunity?
I don't think so. I'll explain why. As I mentioned earlier in this session, some viruses have the habit of infecting large areas every few months. And we're going to see continued waves of this virus come at us unless something dramatic changes, either in our vaccination strategy or with viral behavior. I don't see it going away. What it could do, though, to see the silver lining of the cloud, is that it may make the individuals or the sufferers suffer less. In other words, you may end up seeing less severe disease more and more with each subsequent wave, but that is too early to say, because if the wrong kind of mutation happens, I cannot sit here and predict what the next variant will do. But if anyone believes that with Omicron, COVID is going away, they're completely wrong. There's no doubt about that.
According to you, have we reached the peak, Omicron peak, or do you think we're going to see the peak in the coming next few days, or this is going to continue for some time?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. It's above my expertise. These things are done by modelers. I'm not a modeler, so I do not know the answer to that question. Well, in terms of it being more deadlier, I believe it will be a case of how many people it will infect. If people behave irresponsibly and people behave as though this is some kind of a natural cure for the pandemic, you saw those viral posts circulating in WhatsApp groups. If people believe that and then they pick up the disease, we're going to have a lot of people who become ill at the same time. Now, they may not be severely ill, but if enough people are ill enough to just visit the hospital for a day or two, can you imagine what it could do to our hospital system? And I'm not talking necessarily older individuals here. There are plenty of individuals who are so fatigued they can't get up out of bed. And there are people who are dehydrated, exhausted, who require some IV fluids. So we want to limit the spread to the extent possible, and that is what each one of us should do.
So talking about what each one of us have to do, if you had to list out some precautions for all of us to consider, what would those be?
This virus spreads primarily through indoor gatherings. Now, that does not mean that we can party outdoors. The point is, when many people meet in a closed space, they talk, they laugh, they sing, they cheer, they spend time together, the aerosols or the virus-laden mist-like particles come out of the vocal cords, that's out of the voice box, from the throat, and it fills the air like invisible smoke. And whoever inhales it, breathes it in, will pick up the virus, whether they're unvaccinated, vaccinated, or boosted. And that is what we are observing from around the world. So if each one of us can minimize or avoid indoor gatherings, you cut out that single social visit, that extra social visit, convert that into a phone call. You convert that in-person meeting into a Zoom meeting. And those are the kind of changes if each one of us can do on our own for the next 2 or 3 months. The wave will settle down and we will have fewer people infected. And when fewer people are infected, our hospital systems are less strained. Remember, the system is also strained because healthcare workers are getting infected and they're having to sit at home because when they're infected, they can't work. And the UK and the US are struggling primarily because of that, in addition to large numbers of people who are crowding their emergency room for testing and for less severe indications such as dehydration and weakness. So each one of us have a role to play in this. I would strongly discourage anyone from trivializing it and also encourage COVID appropriate behavior, at least for the next few weeks until this wave passes. Once the wave passes, we will go through a period of several months of what I call low tide. And during that low tide, we can have all the festivities. And I don't think there'll be much of a problem for the healthcare system, even if there are a few cases here and there.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.